It's a hell of an opening.
That's how I originally composed that, with a rubber duck and a shaky egg. Hey, welcome to the show. My name's Steve Jaguar.
And I'm Mike Foster, and today we're going to be talking about Kubernetes dropping from the top open source projects. We're going to talk about how crazy the zero trust term is, and we're going to be debugging containers with cdebug. Welcome to the show.
Welcome once again to your video newsletter about cloud native Kubernetes for your impatient world. I'm excited. I think I think the live demo that I'm going to do later is short enough to make, to justify all the ranting we can probably do in this show.
Yes, a lot of ranting in this show, and a lot of WTFs, layoffs, and China's up to some weird stuff again. So it's going to be interesting. Speaking of which, I have today off. Today's Remembrance Day. So I can't really do a shout out. It's kind of a weird thing to do, but I miss my poppy. I think it's an important thing. We got a nice company-wide email, so very nice.
You get Remembrance Day off
at Red Hat. Yes, it's a federal holiday as well in Canada. It just depends, right? So like a lot of the banks are off. Anything that's federally or provincially is off as well. So very cool.
We do.
Yeah,
we do not, in spite of being relatively involved in the war.
Yeah, just a little bit. I think you guys are just a little involved. But yes, November 11th is a big day. Super excited to actually have the show, though. It's pretty cool. We got a nice lineup. I just came off of a CNCF meetup as well. We had a virtual one this week, which was pretty sweet. Did a KubeCon wrap up. Got to talk a little bit about Service Mesh and Glue.io. So and Solo. We had like a Solo demo.
Solo.io?
Yeah.
Oh, very cool.
Very cool. So yeah, and I think they're doing a hands-on workshop next week in Toronto. They're doing a couple in Montreal. So it's nice to see that circuit get started up again. What about you? You been up to anything?
Getting caught up. I actually had to do a sales call this week. I haven't done one since I was back in since pre-Bridge Crew, where anybody like wrote me into actually talking to a customer in a pre-sales way. And you know what? Don't miss it. Do not miss it.
No kidding. All right. Anything else? Should we just get into the general news?
No, let's dive straight in.
All right.
Hey, SigStore software signing for everybody.
What would our show be without software signing and supply chain security, right?
Yeah, no, I know. This is a white paper written by Zachary Newman, John Speed Myers. They got some good names here. Santiago, Torres, Arias. These are so much cooler names than we have.
Strong
That's
names.
why they're so, strong names. So it goes through a bunch of stuff that blah, 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 right? But really what you want to do is you just click the PDF and you get actually a pretty comprehensive breakdown of just signing across the board. Obviously there's no, look, I would say it's just shy of being unreadably long, but not.
Yeah, wow, a lot of references.
Oh my
Beyond
God,
package
references.
managers, yeah, discussion and future work. I think a lot of that's very, very useful. Did they make any predictions about where they see Sigstore and software signing going in the future?
They're not doing that because they represent Sigstore and software signing. So it would be a heavily biased prediction, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but I kind of like that as long as it's as long as they call out
Okay.
that it's biased. But
let me just, you said conclusion. So let's just like zoom in on the conclusions. It's not very long, right? It's associating the idea of, well, that's actually a good point. PKI like system that associates identity providers for short-lived cryptographic material. So it's likening it to Let's Encrypt. Let's Encrypt change the world in terms of the way we work, and it's trying to do that. It's nowhere near as easy as Let's Encrypt. That would be awesome, but nevertheless, if you need a succinct and clear document to explain to your organization how Sigstore works and why you want to spend time on it, pow, go get it. I think it's why your had skepticism.
Oh, I was just also giving away a shout out to Michael Mann for joining. It says that they claim there's a lot of adoption. I'm wondering how much of it is in production, how quickly, because the project's only been around for 18 months. Normally, you don't see companies move that much, that fast, right?
Let's get all this text off the screen, so we're not distracted by people trying to read it. A lot of it, the word "a lot" is highly subjective.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, that's like when I was a teenager saying Steve had a lot of girlfriends, but Steve hung out with the geeks. So that could be one.
Yeah, what's the joke? You're very handsome. I don't know if you know that one, but yes, that's it's true. I just think we're coming up with our validated patterns at Red Hat, so we're actually getting people to use it in production with Sigstore and a lot of our other components. It's just 18 months is pretty short. So I think a lot of people may use it, or they have greenfield deployments, but there's a lot of consolidation that needs to happen. And I think it's the publicly accessible authorization and authentication that's missing, right? So you have like a core, like let's say you have a core OS, a base image or something like that. That needs to be signed and needs to be publicly available so you can constantly check that your base image is there. So those public libraries and attestations need to be, let's say, more widely available. I think that's kind of what they tried to outline there too.
Yeah. I think if you live in their world, it feels like a lot of people are on board with it. Like if you go to the Sigstore meetings, I try to go to the Sigstore office hours on Mondays, and generally they have last Monday they had a good user story of how somebody, I may have told you about this. Somebody was going like, here's my CI pipeline. They laid it all out on the screen, and this is how we have cosign signing all of our images that go into our trusted registry, and then we pull from those and we verify using Kyverno.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, this looks pretty good, right? But if I were to break down the actual what I saw in terms of the pipeline, I'm like, they're using Jenkins, and I'm like, okay, you got other security problems going on outside of signed images. But it's interesting to see that some big companies are really putting the effort in, and certain styles of build really lend itself to it. They weren't using Fulcio. They weren't using they weren't using Fulcio. They were storing everything in their own OCI registry, so they weren't going full whole hog keyless, but they were still using cosign. It was an interesting use case. So I think it's, if you were to say what's the rise of adoption, that's a better measure of total than a lot in terms of total adoption. I would say they've got a very good hockey stick going.
Yeah, and actually segues nice into the next one, because we're talking about community, Sigstore growing. So why not get somebody that actually knows how to grow communities? So I think it's pretty cool. I don't know why. Does Dan Pop have a couple of LinkedIn? I'm looking at a different one. He actually has his face on my LinkedIn that I'm looking at. But yeah, Dan Pop ending up at ChainGuard.
Oh, are you friends with Dan Pop?
Well, yeah, on LinkedIn.
I'm not. So there's a way to block your image if you're not connected.
Oh.
So that he doesn't want me to know what he looks like. We only have 56 mutual connections, and and have spoken before, but I don't think we never pushed the button. It's sad. But
it's funny. Maybe we missed this because it says as of May, he's been head of growth at ChainGuard for 7 months now.
Well, we missed it then.
Yeah, I missed the boat on this.
Maybe.
But yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I mean, ChainGuard's very fast. It's showing up all over my feeds. So I think it's a good time to get into that project. And
yeah, and I think, well, I mean, from my perspective, Dan Lawrence, who's all over LinkedIn every day, I don't know if he does any CEO work. He seems to just plow like innovative, smart stuff all over LinkedIn. So
marketing genius.
He is. And if he's got, I don't know if he got Dan Pop. Dan Pop used to be at Sysday. If you don't know who Dan Pop is, he was like I don't know, let's call it even public figure, close as you can get to an A-list Kubernetes cloud native celebrity. And then he kind of
instrumental. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I just thought he kind of just, from my perspective, went away, which was a little sad. But now
you
back.
Really brought Falco to the forefront, especially with things like the CKS, and was always involved in the community. It was just did a lot of work for that ecosystem. And then I was wondering, I was like, did he get to the 4-year cliff or something like that? He was at Sysdig for 5 years, and then all of a sudden, boom! But he emerged at ChainGuard. Yeah,
gone.
I know, crazy. And speaking of things that disappear, Facebook employee gone.
That's mean.
Yeah, and this could be the WTF section. We also, along with our big spender section, we have this true up layoffs. There's a I don't know if you have the link ready. I'll post it in the chat.
I got it.
Oh, there it is. And so you can see the layoffs in tech this year, and look at that Meta in November taking up like what, a third?
Number one. So, no, it's just like a contest because look down here.
Yeah, that's Elon's doing.
And then almost made our news. Stripe, 14%. It's been at least Stripe has not a good reason, a bad reason. A payment system bases their future predictions on pandemic buying. Oops.
Yeah, not the best. There is rumors that Cisco's in the market and shopping around too. So might see another big spender.
To hire? Oh, I see. No. Yes, that would be really good. Okay, cool.
Yeah, because
so this is just go on.
I was going to say a lot of the evaluations have dropped, and a lot of the companies that were speculative and have specific burn rates, they hired a bunch. It's easy to hire during when money's flowing free, and then now you got to take some, what's the word for it? Let's say after pandemic measures. I don't know.
Evasive action.
Yeah, evasive action.
To use a Star Trek kind of term.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I Twitter. We know what's going on. Chaos. All right, fine. Meta just. I don't know. Let's not start talking about metaverse and all that kind of stuff. We could go down a huge rabbit hole there. But I mean, Stripe's got a tough one there, right? I mean, young CEOs all running a tech business, and they have to scale up to handle the pandemic, right? They have to.
Yep. Better outgrow.
Yeah, better outgrow and handle it than underdo it. But it was inevitable that they were going to have that there's going to be some kind of error margin on there. It's just kind of big. Too bad. But so they're basically a whole ton of super smart developers just got released into the wild. So if I were a startup, I'd be all over that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and well, on to the next one, because other things are falling out of favor, I guess, if you want to call it that. Maybe not favor, but falling out of popularity.
All right, let's go to the top. So you can see I was just looking at it.
So GitHub for the last certain amount of years has been tracking the top repositories, top amount of contributions. Kubernetes for the last 3 years has been a top 20 consistently. Mm-hmm. And it was this year that it fell out of the top 20 most contributed projects. I think VS Code is number one.
Why am I not even finding this? Where is the list? There it is. There we go. Mm-hmm. Jesus, it's way down.
Yeah.
Kubernetes. Yeah. Is this the bit we wanted? We'd say out of the top 20? Is that what you just said?
Yeah. So there's most popular repositories in 2022. There's popular, but there's also most contributed to. It's a very long list. I just remember. So there it is. So if you scroll up, there's a little. It was on the side chat on the right. Keep going. One more. Keep going up.
Oh my God.
Keep going.
Come on, man.
Okay. Anyways, there's a little insights there, and you can see it, and it said TensorFlow and Kubernetes fell out of the top 20 and were replaced.
Insights here.
I don't know. You could also just Control F for Kubernetes.
Bloody hell! All right.
There it is. TensorFlow and Kubernetes both dropped out of the top 20 after 3 consecutive years on the list, 2019 to 2021.
Okay. Well, you found it. I don't know. So I found this whole thing. I mean, this was the headline on it. The reason we added it to the show. But then I just started scrolling through. Like, this is a fascinating article.
It's a well done graphic.
Yeah, it's got pretty graphics for sure. Like geographic dimension. And let me show you the one I think would have earned a place in the show for sure. Way near the bottom. This.
Most active developers,
including bots.
Yeah.
And you just watch robots take over the world.
Yep.
95% of contributions to GitHub were done by bots.
I mean, it kind of makes sense. Look at your application, right? I mean,
Yeah.
automatic remediation, PR. PRs. I mean, and they might be small, but they're not insignificant, especially with everything as code.
Yeah, they're good
small
contributions. It's just amazing that's like, oh, wow. Okay, so the world is being taken over by bots. And where's the other one? Who gave the most stars in 22? Okay, this is an account. This can't be a real account.
But
136 per day.
Yeah, it's got to be a bot.
Per day.
Or somebody needs to get out of their house. One or the other.
That's crazy. That's not possible. These are you're all bots, all of you.
You're all bots. Oh my gosh. All right. The last thing we have in our general news is 8 CNCF tools to run Kubernetes at the edge in bare metal. We definitely want to demo some of these. There's some that I hadn't heard of that I want to try out. But here, I'll bring you back into the stream. And by the way, if you're following along, all the links are in the description. You can check them all out later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. So some I know, most I don't. Like KubeEdge, Tinkerbell,
Super Edge.
Open your Super Edge? Nope.
To be followed out by Mega Edge and Ultra Edge.
Yeah. Maximum Edge. OpenALB, I know that. Cluster API.
Yep.
Cluster API is. I used to kind of heckle it. Now I kind of like it, I think.
Yeah, it had a lot of interest at KubeCon this year.
Yeah,
it's a couple analysts asking me about it.
My colleague I work with, Matt, he is a big Tinkerbell fan. So if we need a demo, maybe I might tap him up, bring him in to do a little bit of Tinkerbell. See what happens.
Oh yeah, you know what Matt will give us? He'll give us a good tool time and also probably a good WTF section. I think he could chime in on a couple things as well.
Oh yeah, he'd happily just participate with his opinions.
Yeah,
that is not going to be a problem.
Speaking of which, WTF. All right, this was one of my favorite articles I ran across this week.
It's definitely cool. You're going to bring it up?
Yeah, I got you.
There you go. All right.
China is likely stockpiling and deploying vulnerabilities, says Microsoft. So this article is very interesting. There was a policy change in 2021 where China said, if you find a vulnerability, do not report it. You have to report it to local authorities first and not to a vulnerability database or the actual project so they can fix it. Now, what's happened is there's less vulnerabilities coming out of China that are getting reported, but there's also more anonymous reports that are popping up. So people are still doing some work. You just don't necessarily know where or who it came from. But my theory, and I shared this with Steve, is that they're cataloging these 0 days and then watching the vulnerability databases over the years to see if they get patched. So like, let's say there's a buffer overflow in some project, but it doesn't get patched and you go through the database and after 2 years, it still isn't patched. Well, then maybe the impact downstream is a lot better. So now we say, okay, well, this might be worthwhile trying to exploit instead of trying to keep up with things that are actively getting seen and maybe triaged because containers move so fast. Now it's more about cataloging and then trying to get the biggest impact. That's my thought.
I think it's just devil's advocate or maybe agreeing with you. I don't know which one I'm doing here, but it's a great idea. Like from from the perspective of Chinese threat
intelligence.
It's flipping
yeah, and you get to fix your own too, right? Like you shore up your everything at home, and then wait to see, hey, maybe there's this massive, maybe Kubernetes has a big exploit, and then you don't find out for a year because China hasn't told you, and then you do it all at once.
So they arm everything that they need, and then you don't find out until negative reinforcement occurs. Let's call it that.
Yeah. So China, WTF? Stop doing this stuff.
Yeah,
it's very mean.
I don't know. I have a feeling that if that's what Microsoft is accusing China of, America might do it too. Who knows? Other people are going to steal the idea.
I don't know. I do like how open, let's say, North America and the Western world is, especially with vulnerabilities. I mean, OpenSSL was handled extremely well last couple weeks.
That is very true.
We're learning lessons slowly. Heartbleed, Apache struts, and things like that. We're slowly getting there. It's taken a while, but speaking of us screwing up security, and more importantly, like screwing up marketing, I think it's just a big one. This came across my feed on Reddit. Generally speaking, zero trust is a misnomer. Rather than reducing trust to zero, it simply involves adopting a policy of controlling trust at a boundary, and rather than letting uncontrolled trust be the primary mode of operation. Thoughts?
All right. So zero trust is got to be on our bingo card. Always at hand. What is in the top corner of our bingo card? Bam.
Yeah, in giant
zero
font.
Trust in giant font.
Yeah. Maybe we'll go to one of the big spenders this week and there'll be zero trust on their website.
We can try that. But yeah, if you take the idea, let me market this for you. If you take the idea of zero trust at its word, it's not a case of trusting nothing. I mean, let me go back to the SigStore demonstration, right? As part of his demonstration, he was saying, okay, so as a result, in this pipeline, we trust this, this, and this. He said it outright. We trust our registry, we trust this, and we trust HashiCorp Vault. I think he was using HashiCorp, an aspect of Vault, as part of their certificate management, I believe. And my ears perked up, and I was just like, yeah, you kind of have to. Like, for this to work, there's a certain amount of, let's call it delegation of risk. You're signing that off, which means you're not technically zero trust anymore, but it's more about risk management and controlling the boundary, which is what this being said here.
Yeah.
So is it bad to say zero trust, or is it better just to understand that zero trust within what you control?
I think once you get into it and you understand what exactly the concept is, it's fine. The issue is when you have people who don't know security at all, and then you use that and you say zero trust, and then I get emails like, what are we doing for zero trust networking? What are we doing for zero trust RBAC? And I'm like, the term doesn't even make sense.
No.
Right. But this is the issue. We make up a term, we market it, and then for some reason, somebody that is a default deny everything can market themselves as zero trust, but then it's not operational as a tool, because you better really know the permissions and all the authentication authorizations that you need in your cluster in order to create something like that. But really, it's just about setting layers and then giving access when needed, and just starting at a baseline of like, I don't trust you, and you have to prove that you trust me, versus when you get into Kubernetes, I trust everything, and then we have to shut things down. I mean,
yeah, it's like during any of the CK exams where it's like, okay, put a was it block all? What's the name of the policy? The zero.
Deny all for network policy.
Put the deny all in there, and you're like, and you do it because you're like, yep, this is what I'm supposed to do, and you're like, nobody's going to do this. Like, no one's really going to deny all, and then slowly release. Ooh, Michael Bam with some insights. Slowly release things as you release, and it breaks. Okay, add. Release, break. Okay, add. I don't know. I prefer least privilege because it's kind of the same thing, but you get your head around it easily, a little bit better.
It's a more accurate term, but less marketable. So
yeah, it is. Yeah, it actually sounds kind of negative. Zero trust.
Zero trust.
Sounds like the name of a movie.
Yeah, it was funny. I was giving a demo about the network policy, like how Stackrocks can generate network policies for your entire cluster. Yeah. And I did it and applied it. And then I said, this is really powerful. You would never do this, though.
Oh, yeah, of course.
People come online, they'd be like, why wouldn't you do it? I'm like, because you just probably break 1,000 things, especially if you applied it to like multiple clusters at once. Like, there's a difference between a security tool that does these things at zero trust and then one that can actually be implemented across different silos, let's say.
I
That's
hear you.
yeah.
There's even a button
Mitigation.
in Stack Rocks like to apply, and you're like,
Yeah,
look at
right in
the
the UI.
button. Don't ever do this.
Yeah. 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 And I got pings. They're just like, why do you say it like that? I'm like, because you need to be honest, because somebody's going to use a tool and do that, and they're going to get in so much trouble, and they're going to yell at me. Like, I don't want that.
Nope.
Speaking of people getting yelled at, Elon, the $8 fee. Oh, well, you got to go back one. We're talking about
no. Yeah,
there
sorry.
you go. So this one came across my desk as Twitter brings on the $8 fee. Phishing emails have started. So they're going after verified users and saying, hey, you have to pay, you have to upgrade. And I guess people are falling for it.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, why not?
With any well-intended change, even if you think it's not well-intended and it's stupid, everybody's going to latch onto it. And suddenly it's like, yep, wow, now you've just given me a target market that is expecting some form of contact. Perfect. I wish, is there examples? I didn't actually scroll that far down. I just laughed at it.
Yeah. I mean, I personally think that if Twitter had this model from the beginning, it would have been successful. The only reason it's stupid is because you can't go freemium to paid. You can't give the same features that you gave for free and then start charging people for it. But honestly, especially when I was playing baseball and things like that, if I was able to put a blue check mark on and, have this ability, I think it would be extremely useful. And I can definitely see people in media, like teams or groups of people, if you're like an NBA player or something, that really benefiting, because it's like everybody gets check marked. If you're on, like if I played for Northeastern baseball, I guarantee you that each university is going to come out and verify everybody. One, because it's easier to track all of your students and the dumb things that they do. And then two, you can kind of avoid people from impersonating, especially now that college students can make money off their likeness. So there's definitely a market for it. The question is, do content creators come to Twitter? Because things like YouTube and Instagram just pay way too much.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So you get better content on Twitter. Anyways, I'm getting on a little rant. This is supposed to be WTF, not my thoughts on Elon, but
I know. We could go. It's like the number one thing, I guess. Are you in tech? So like, because you're in tech, do you get family members pinging you going, Jesus, and Elon Musk, blah, blah. Like, this is all I'm getting over the past 2 weeks from people who are not at all in technology, just assuming I'm going to know something.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. I also get, how do I upgrade? How do I copy my exact machine that's Windows 10 over to Windows 11? And I'm like, oh, that's a tough one.
Out of nowhere. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Enough about our day in the life of our existence.
Yeah, we have a last WTF before we get into some big spenders. This one, I believe Dan Lawrence might have posted this, or somebody else. This is a Slim AI article on the news stack, which I'm trying to bring to the stream here. And it talks about how 70% of people that they interviewed are looking for zero vulnerabilities in their containers, which
let's bring that down. There it is.
Wild. Yeah, there it is. 70% developers responding to the survey said their customers and end users are demanding that their containers have zero vulnerabilities. Crazy.
Well, you can demand it. You're not going to get it.
But at the same time, like, why has this not changed? Because we've had virtual machines, we've had bare metal, we've had operating systems. They always had vulnerabilities associated with them. Why is it now that we want zero? I don't know what's changed.
Because do you think there's compliance directives or something? Like ignorant compliance directives say, well, you can't deploy vulnerabilities.
I blame zero trust.
Zero trust.
But I actually am a big fan of Slim AI. Not only, like, if you're loading your containers up with packages that you're not using at all, especially when your container application is running, get rid of it. And that has massive downstream effects from everything like a build pipeline. You have different tests and stuff like that with packages in it. Maybe you don't need it. That's going to save you a ton of money in the cloud. Like, it's a security and cost management feature, slimming your container images. So
it's awesome. Yeah, they do a great job.
I think a lot of different security providers should do something similar, where, I mean, if you're doing all this runtime analysis on what's going on in the container, I don't understand why you're not feeding that information back and looking at the Docker file or Podman file and making suggestions. I think that's cool.
Yeah, I think so. I think Slim's still good. Now, I always repeat my caveat on Slim. I don't like deploying something where I don't know exactly what I've got inside it, because I know what I put in, and I did my SBOM. I mean, Slim should just fart out an S bomb every time it slims. Like, really?
Yeah,
it's got to, right? Otherwise, I don't know what's there.
That'd be a good add-on. It's like, here's everything. Here's a generated S bomb for you. What format do you want? I think that's cool.
Yeah.
Got on the product management team. Come on.
Yeah, you could just do a diff, and you could go, okay, that's what they removed. Cool.
Maybe auto PRs. Say, hey, remove these.
Oh my God, that's an awesome idea. Slim AI, are you watching? Yeah, we should be on their product team.
Seriously.
We're gonna find out they already have these things, and we're just way back.
Yeah, they definitely do. Yeah. They're way ahead of us. It's fine. All right. Well, speaking of up and comers, spend some money. Duh.
All right, let me see. So before we get into who Leica even is, this photo is just too damn good. It looks like a Netflix lawyer spinoff from The Good Wife or something, and it's like everyone's just a little too handsome, and I don't know who are they? These people can't run a company. They can only run one on TV. SOC 2, HIPAA, GDPR, and okay, so it's compliance centric platform that just got a Series C for 50 million. I gotta tell you, if I was an investor and these three people walk in the room, I just hand them money.
All right, Steve, you got a little bit of a crush.
Noted. I don't even know who to pick.
It's a great photo. Yeah, did you read into exactly what they do? They said they have 500 customers, Series C. Yeah. Compliance is always very interesting, especially now that each cloud provider in Kubernetes has their own compliance standard, their own way of doing things. And it's like, you need some sort of standard across all platforms. I think that's what these are going for. Yeah. Right? Because typically a lot of the cloud providers, they just give you the compliance that checks some boxes so that you won't move off the platform. But if you're doing anything multiple, hybrid, on-prem, you're gonna need your own. So
I think so. And I think previously, to like not to a fault, but CSPM systems used to look at what you did and say, oh, and by the way, here's a compliance framework that we've picked through and we think you're doing well. So it's the secondary element of it. It's not starting with compliance where you feel like this is the core competency, so I know I'm good. So it's interesting to flip that around and say, look, like maybe I mean, having been a part of trying to sell CSPM systems, first thing people say is, oh, will this work for my compliance? Will this get me SOC 2? Will this get me HIPAA? It's like, just yeah, I think they're onto something.
Yep.
I'm gonna get my ass kicked for saying that about CSPM.
Yeah, we talked. We were supposed to talk about a link last week where it was like the stages of compliance, like where security is enabler and where it's not. And it's like security and compliance in big corporations is seen as enabler because it's very hard to hit those standards, but the big companies can afford to invest in those tools to do it.
Yep.
Yeah, because you don't want to be a Fortune 500 company and run into compliance issues. One, that's a terrible marketing headline.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then two, you're going to be running around scrambling internally, trying to fix things when you should be developing and making your products better. So.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, there's a level where compliance becomes the number one effort within security, but it shouldn't be the be all end all. That's where things go wildly wrong.
Agreed. All right. Security automation startup. Veriti?
I think it's Veriti.
Veriti.
Sounds better. Stealth comes out of stealth with 18.5 million. Can you imagine? I think we live in a bubble where we go, yeah, that's pretty good. Whereas anybody not in security would come out of stealth with like 100,000 and be like, oh yeah, this is great. I'm good for a year.
Yeah.
But it's awesome. So a platform for unifying cybersecurity infrastructure. That's a pretty vague term. I'm not going to dive into what Veriti do, but anybody, and by the way, what a surprise. Checkpoint, based out of Israel. That's not too surprising. Everything good in security seems to come out of Israel. It's nuts. But they have the infrastructure, so they deserve it. Oh wow, you got an argument there? You kind of give me like
no, I completely agree.
Oh, okay.
I think when you look at something like the the war machine in America. It's the cybersecurity defense machine in Israel. They just churn it out.
Yep, that's right. America makes the best. What do I call it? Post-war military. What's so?
I'm trying to think of something. I got nothing.
Yeah, what are they?
They make the war machine. What?
They make the war machine, and so they have people who used to be in the military that are now mercenaries. There you go.
Yeah.
And these guys come out of there, and they make billion-dollar startups.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like a better option.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay. Right before we get into the tool time, Germans post-war had to go into cars and trains because they couldn't do war machines. Americans went and they developed a lot of flights and rockets and things like that because they were allowed to. So you can see the competency in the engineers. And I think in Israel, a lot of it is on defense specifically.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're surrounded on all sides. So it's just interesting to see the engineering effort because you only have so much in every location in the world. So,
all right, let's do it.
Let's rant over next tool time. Ready?
Yeah. Everybody know what time it is?
A quick one today, right?
Quick to demonstrate. We can discuss it though at length if we wish. Let me bring this up now again. So one of the many things that came across, because it's like if we go through every tool that ever comes across our paths, oh my gosh, we'll never get anything done. This is, I don't know how to say his last name. Let's say or whatever his handle. Forget it. cdebug, experimental container debugger. Look at the dates on these. This is pretty fresh, I would say. And it's looking to debug containers, and it goes through. I like this. Like, this is so new. Docker, everything else coming soon.
Yeah.
So lots of ambition. So you're probably pretty familiar with what this is trying to do. This isn't a Kubernetes tool. That's probably the first thing. That's a container tool. And it's looking to find ways of playing off the results of Docker Slim or distroless or just like super secure images that you run, go into runtime, and you're screwed if they don't work. Because you're just like going, all right, logs. Nope, it died, so I don't get any logs.
Yeah.
So you're just kind of staring at yourself in the mirror. And then what you do, most of the distroless images, certainly that I want to say Google have, there's a debug like version, so you can go super slim dash debug, and now there's a shell. Nice. Then there's a few more tools, so you can do that and you can get debug versions, but then you're not actually running the same. The build once run anywhere is kind of out the window because you've changed the base image, and heaven forbid you start it all up and it actually works in the debug version. So anyway, that's a real pain in the backside to any of the debugging methods. And when was Kubernetes debug? When did that come out into existence? Like 1.23?
The sidecar ability to debug came out recently, but you've had kubectl debug, I think, since 1.15.
Yeah,
it's been a while.
But it was hidden.
Yeah.
It was like a beta feature. So I've got, is this working? Okay. Every time I do this, like something happens, I get here and it doesn't work anymore. So I've got kubectl get pods. I got a bunch. Okay, so I got a couple things I've set up in advance. One is a distroless ingress, which is pretty small, and then I've got this one I've just called no shell.
Okay.
So let's kubectl exec -it, or I guess it doesn't really matter if I put ti habit. Let's say shell. It should just complain because there isn't one.
Container
Same with on. It just says no executable. If I do that, it just goes, you're screwed. Good luck, buddy. Okay. Not going to happen.
Oh, because it's not there. Oh, okay, I gotcha.
Yeah, and so if I want to do, so I can't do that. This is the Kubernetes example. This isn't really the demo, but if you've not seen what debug looks like, then we can show you. Hey, now I'm going to exec into mine as shell, but I'm not really. What's going to end up happening is it's going to kind of do some Docker magic. Let's use busybox, and then I always find this confusing because I'm saying where I want to go with interactivity, but then I still have to write dash target. Like for some reason I just find that like really
Yeah.
strange. And oh, I can't spell apparently. Did I? Oh, I didn't put
Is
a
it
dash
image? Yeah.
Yeah, it is dash image.
Okay. Nice.
Cool. And the only thing that Minor Shell does is it's like a nothing that just runs a pause. So if I go ps dash, yeah, okay. So you can see, even though I'm actually in BusyBox, I'm sharing process space with I've mounted basically the process space of the target cluster into here.
Yeah. You're basically running a sidecar.
I'm kind of running, I guess it's an ephemeral container.
Yeah.
We've never demonstrated that. We talked about it. It's a debug ephemeral container that the moment I'm gone, it vanishes. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of cool. So once I end my debug session, there's no more adjacent container to do debug. So there's like your first demo. That's like, this is what it looks like if you want to run a debug. What's cool about it, I've sort of learned is that in playing with it today, is that you can do all sorts of cool stuff. Like you can like put Kali Linux as your debugger. Like you can do anything, and you can really like dive into the process contents of what's actually running in your dead or not very healthy container, and it mounts the process space in. So I thought, all right, this was a good education for me because I hadn't played much with.
And before these debuggers, you used to have. It was really annoying to go into the container because you either have to have the packages in the container to help debug it, which create a security issue too, right? If you have shell that you don't need, flag it. So it's nice that you just have only the packages you need, and then you're able to debug on the side.
Boom. You attach with your packages because you're actually in BusyBox. So that is the idea. And then cdebug came along, and I was playing with that. So now I had to do that with Docker. So when you're creating an image, or if I'm creating an image, I don't know what you do, but I do occasionally Docker run it just to go, it's not lunacy, like it's going to run before I go through all the rigmarole of creating a manifest and pushing it into something local or something remote. So I do it a Docker run. Now let's just do image list. And so there's this distro list thing down there. Was that the one I want to use? Let me just see. This made me laugh. This was a suggested play image for distro lists.
Created 52
years ago. Oh. Okay.
Seems off.
It's an unsupported cluster, let's just say. Jeez. But I think I don't know how they did that. It's pretty cool. So simple logger, is that the one I want? Yeah, let's do that one, I think. Let's and what's it called? Let's do what did I give it a name? Let's see if I called it. It is running. Is this what I called it? I call it my distro list.
Find out.
I did. Yeah, I did give it a name. So I did get it running. It's there. So now I've done the same thing that I did with kubectl debug, but it's a wrapper around another version of Docker run, but it provides the target and it uses BusyBox. You can see.
Okay.
It's grabbed.
Gotcha. How does it know to use BusyBox?
It's a default.
Okay. So you can change the default.
Right. You can provide via the command line. Say, I don't like this. I'm going to use, what was another example actually it gave? There was another advanced tools called, I can't remember, it said with an N. And Nixery. There's a Nixery one that has even more tools in it. Of course, you can go beyond that, right?
Yeah, so I think the benefit if you're a developer and you have to work in Kubernetes and Docker, like maybe you have Docker desktop locally, and then you have a Kubernetes cluster for testing or something like that, you can use this one command to do both. I'm assuming if you have but that's where they're going to go to, right?
Yeah.
So that instead of having to do like a kubectl exec and a Docker exec and like make sure you're specifying this specific one, you just set a default and you do that in Kubernetes and Docker or whatever your environment is. I think that's the benefit, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there is actually, I didn't show it, but there's a -- privilege, just like you could run.
Wow.
So if you want to connect to a privileged image that crashed, it won't let you unless you say I'm privileged, and then it will privilege you to connect to the privileged one. So that they've already thought of that, which is, I thought that was really clever.
And I'm assuming you probably pulls from the kube config to check if you're privileged or not on a cluster. Maybe not Docker, because
this
Docker
is-
it's local,
right.
right? But I'm assuming that that's the next step.
Well, well, coming soon,
Yeah.
Kubernetes. So what is slightly better? Let me just do a little, see if this does it. So see this
Mhm.
and see this. I have the file system mounted. This is different from kubectl debug. Debug, I'm in BusyBox, but I have the process space. Here, I look like I'm in the target container, like completely.
So it just maps it like 1-to-1 basically when you're in there too.
Yeah, what it's doing is it's doing the Docker like -- network -- pid -- uts, like it's mounting everything. Then it mounts the target, and you can kind of see there's some mounts going on here,
Mhm.
and then it chroots, and so you're back into the original container.
That's
So it's
awesome.
like it breaks out of itself
Yeah.
into the target container, and then it's like you did a container breakout into the other container.
Yeah, and it makes it so that like typically if you go into the ephemeral container, you have to go over into the second container, into the one you're looking to debug. Instead, this is the exact environment that you'd be hoping if you had those tools in the container already.
You
So
had the
it
tools
maps
and
it
you
all
had
perfectly.
Yeah, and then so you're rooted in there, and then if I do now, you can see it's got a dot, but let's just, if you go into this little mount, it's mounted back. Oh, let's just, well, I can already see it, so let's just do this. I don't know if it's not going to work because I've done it a couple of times. Yeah, I think, oh, that interesting little bug, because I've done it twice now, so it's created 2 mounts. Interesting. So there's all my debug commands. And so you get double benefit. You get all these debug commands are now mounted in the new true area, but I can also run the commands in the original container.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I get both.
Now, when
double
you
advantage.
leave, does it clean up? Because you said there's a mount left over there, right?
So
Before.
that's new.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've gone twice into it. So, and there was a double mount. I was like, and one was dead. So I'm like,
Yeah.
oh.
I mean, realistically, if you're going in to debug something, it's probably in testing or local anyways, so it doesn't really matter. But if you were in staging, or you're never going to do this in production, obviously.
So I've still got a BusyBox sitting here. So
Okay.
maybe, I don't know, right? I don't know how well it cleans up, but that's kind of it. That's kind of what it does. It's pretty new, but I was like nothing went wrong. Unlike most of my demos, it just kind of started working. And when I saw the difference between debug and this, I was like, oh, this is better than debug. If they make this work for Kubernetes, I'm gonna be super happy about that.
I mean, you think about if you're a developer building locally into a container, you auto build, everything gets cached. Maybe you change the bottom layer every time you're developing, build it again, run it. And then with one command, you're in the container looking at all the processes, seeing everything that's going on, getting all the logs, looking at it, if it crashed. Like just the automation standpoint, I think would be extremely useful and fast.
Yeah. So it's, thumbs up to cdebug. Cdebug was created by, I think, some of the guys at Robusta. Remember, we've mentioned them a few times. Rather opinionated people about CPU limits and such things. But awesome job. That was pretty sweet.
That's a great developer tool.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that about wraps it up for this week, right? And you're out. That's it. Well, what do we have going on next week?
Bye. Oh yeah, let's say this. All right. So tentatively, fingers crossed, because I have an email confirmation and I haven't checked my email since then. We mentioned Arcade last week, and that was a tool created by Alex Ellis. That prompted me to reach out to Alex and say, hey, do you want to come on the show and maybe show that or anything else you really care about? And he wrote back and said, yeah, cool, but just not this week. Maybe next week. I'll prep something cool. Who knows what it'll be? We know it'll be awesome. So we may have a special guest next week.
We have a special guest. Same time next week, 10 a.m., 3 p.m. GMT. Yeah. See you next Friday. Until then, and I'm Mike Foster, and have a good weekend.